Okay, Trigger Bar Philosopher, welcome you back to another video. This time I'm going to be talking about 10 millimeter performance. So I have my Springfield XTM 3.8 inch Elite chambered in 10 millimeter with the EPS carry on it, optic. And I took it to the range and I shot several rounds of the Velo, several rounds of the Underwood, and sorry, this Velo is 200 grain hard cast, dangerous game defense. And then I shot several rounds of the Underwood 220 hard cast, 10 millimeter. And then the Buffalo Bore Outdoorsman 220 grain hard cast. And we can just take a quick look at what each of these rounds look like. Here's the Buffalo Bore, here's the Underwood, and here is the Velo. I'd never shot the Velo before. I've traditionally known how good Buffalo Bore, Underwood are. I just wanted to do a comparison, see what they look at. So I brought each of these rounds out to my local range and I shot them on my lab radar and I got some velocities. What was interesting is that I've always heard just tremendous things about how good Underwood and Buffalo Bore are. And so I just thought I would look at it. I will put up some screenshots of my lab radar just showing you what the average is, but in summary, for the Velo, it had a pretty big standard deviation. It ranged between 1,231 feet per second and 1057 feet per second with a standard deviation of 55. So that was a pretty big deviation and was a little bit shocked at how I felt it didn't perform super well. Again, that's 200 grain versus the rest of these are going to be 220 grain. So you'd expect these to be a little bit higher velocity, and they're just kind of in the middle and sort of okay. So I would say that this is an okay round, maybe not a great round. Next point was that I was really kind of interested in how these two would compare. I've heard recent reports from several YouTubers that the Buffalo Bore is showing to be more consistent and to be hotter than the Underwood. Well, I actually discovered the opposite. Okay, so for the Underwood, I got an average velocity of 1165 with a high of 1186 and a low of 1189 for a standard deviation of about 14. So that was extremely consistent and also the highest performing round. Velocities, even compared to the 200 round, this had higher average velocity. And then against the Buffalo Bore, again, we saw a pretty big standard deviation, not 55 like the Velo, but actually 53. The Buffalo Bore was on average 1084. And the highest was 1139 and the lowest was 1001. So again, this was a little bit slower than the Velo, but also 20 grains heavier than the Velo. So again, I still think the Buffalo Bore was a higher performing. I'll show some numbers and some charts on actually how the energy foot pounds equates between these three. But I just wanted to show, I've been hearing reports that the Buffalo or the Underwood hadn't been loading consistently. This lot, very consistent. Had very good standard deviation of 14. The Buffalo Bore, a little bit higher standard deviation and not as consistent as I would have imagined. Also, the Underwood was a little bit hotter. So I hope you guys like this information, like this content. Please like the video, subscribe, share. Let me know in the comments which of these, if any of these rounds you prefer to shoot when you are using your 10 millimeter. It was important for me to take a look at it because I'm going on my elk hunt here in a couple of days, and I'm going to be carrying this gun, and what I'm guessing, or what I'm now thinking, is this ammunition. Got my red dot sighted in for it. So let me know what you're choosing on your hunts to use as personal protection. Thanks again. Okay, this is the Underwood 5-shot test. The average was 1165, the high was 1186, the lowest was 1189, standard deviation 14.